A major drug bust in the heart of downtown San Antonio. Bexar County deputies say they seized roughly 10 kilos of meth. 2 suspects are now in jail.
Tyler, a man in custody accused of running a dangerous drug operation right near schools and daycare. Tyler, police say this man right here on your screen, 39-year-old Sumatras Forge, ran a years-long drug operation.
Charges were filed against Min Su Fang, a Chinese national who's accused of being a supplier of the chemicals. Agents say these chemicals are shipped from China to the U.S., where Fang's associates would alter shipping labels and send the chemicals to Mexico.
The U.S. Attorney's Office announcing dozens of charges in a major drug trafficking investigation in Houston and also several other states across the country. Officials say that they all operated under the control of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel.
A woman's bond has been set after Beaumont police say she was caught with more than 1,000 pounds. Say their narcotics unit found it during a traffic stop on I-10.
County Sheriff's Office just made a major drug bust. 22 people from around Central Texas have been indicted now for meth trafficking.
And this just into our newsroom as well. $2.5 million worth of drugs are off the streets tonight. It comes after a major drug bust on San Antonio South Side.
Texas drug bust headlines aren't just isolated raids, they're snapshots of a statewide supply chain that keeps shifting under pressure. One week, it's a downtown hotel room tied to a bulk meth load allegedly mixed with fentanyl. Another week, it's a multi-county corridor like Seguin, New Braunfels, Guadalupe County getting hit in a coordinated sweep. Zoom out further, and the pattern gets even bigger. Precursor chemicals moving through international shipping lanes. Cartel-linked indictments stretching from Houston to out-of-state hubs. Apartment complexes accused of operating like drive-thru markets. And highway stops where a K9 alert turns a routine pullover into a record-level seizure. This breakdown pulls those cases into one timeline showing how investigators say the product moved, where it was staged, and why the enforcement phase often hits fast once warrants and intel line up.
Deadly drugs. Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar says it was a tip that led deputies to the True by Hilton Hotel off East Houston Street downtown. A stakeout and a search warrant uncovered 2 separate rooms. A common trafficking tactic, the sheriff says, where deputies along with DPS troopers discovered a massive stash of drugs. 39-year-old Yolanda Ramos Ponce and 22-year-old Tomas Hernandez were arrested in connection to the bust. Sheriff Salazar says the 2 may be tied to drug cartels that cook the drugs in Mexico, then smuggle them across the border into the U.S.
Deputies in Bexar County say a routine tip about a drug deal led them straight into a downtown hotel room where they found a bulk load of narcotics, about 10 kilograms of meth that investigators said was mixed-laced with fentanyl. Officials estimated the street value at roughly $500,000 to $800,000, calling it the kind of seizure that can supply a lot of street-level distribution. According to reporting, the investigation pointed deputies to the True by Hilton on East Houston Street near downtown. Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar said investigators received information about a suspected deal happening out of a hotel room, moved in, and recovered the narcotics during the enforcement action. Authorities said 2 people were arrested.
41 people are charged for drug trafficking in major cities across the U.S. 23 of them are already in custody. 16 remain at large and 2 have died. Officials say that they all operated under the control of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel.
Federal prosecutors say a 50-count indictment charged 41 people in a Texas drug trafficking case they linked to CJNG, alleging the network moved various drugs through Houston, Galveston, and out to cities like New Orleans, Pensacola, Atlanta, Nashville, and Chicago. Authorities said 23 defendants were already in custody, while 16 were still being sought, including Roxamudio Mendoza, described as a cartel-linked source believed to be in Mexico. Officials also listed major seizures tied to the investigation, hundreds of kilos along with guns, cash, and valuables.
And son are under arrest after authorities say they were found in possession of illegal drugs and guns, one of which was stolen. According to Marshall Police, a search warrant was executed today at a home along North Fulton Street. During that search, police say illegal narcotics, multiple firearms, cash, and items connected to a previous aggravated robbery were discovered.
Cruz Rodriguez Sr. and his son Cruz Rodriguez Jr. were taken into custody.
His son are under arrest after authorities say they were found in possession of illegal drugs and guns, one of which was stolen. Police in Marshall, Texas said a drug investigation turned into a wide-ranging evidence haul after narcotics officers served a search warrant at a home in the 1600 block of North Fulton Street. According to the Marshall Police Department, officers reported finding illegal drugs, a substantial amount of cash, and multiple firearms, including one gun reported stolen. Police also said they recovered items tied to an aggravated robbery, which is why the case was described as more than just a narcotics bust. Investigators said the evidence they collected was consistent with drug sales distribution, not simple possession.
39-year-old Sumatra's Forge ran a years-long drug operation using 9 people to sell homes across the city, many of them within 1,000 feet of schools and child care centers. Forge now faces charges of manufacture and delivery of a controlled substance and organized criminal activity. He's being held on a $1.15 million bond. Messages showing Forge was involved in cooking and selling the drugs. One alleged dealer, Tommy Spikes, was found dead in May at a known drug house tied to Forge. Investigators say several suspects are linked to that 5-2 Hoover Crip gang. The investigation is ongoing and more arrests could follow.
Investigation in Tyler, East Texas, where authorities say an undercover informant helped identify and build a case against a man they described as the leader of a drug ring. The public write-ups around the video say investigators believe the group was operating close enough to everyday spaces to raise the urgency, and one summary also claims investigators connected parts of the case to a 5 Deuce Hoover Crip affiliation.
Beaumont police say their narcotics unit found it during a traffic stop on I-10 Thursday morning. Officers stopped a van with a trailer for a traffic violation. One of their canines started barking at that trailer. Then detectives opened it to find roughly 579 kilos.
What looked like a routine traffic stop on I-10 East near mile marker 832 turned into one of the biggest Coca-Cola seizures ever publicly linked to the Beaumont Police Department. Investigators said a 15-passenger van towing a U-Haul trailer was pulled over after an alleged traffic violation, and a K9 named Rip alerted during the stop, leading officers to search the trailer. Inside, police reported finding 12 large totes packed with Coca-Cola, about 1,276 pounds. Authorities said the driver was a 43-year-old Florida woman, Kedra Parker, and they booked her into the Jefferson County Jail after the seizure.
Take a look. These are the 5 men arrested. 2 other people involved are now in custody. Constable Alan Rosen says this group set up shop at an apartment complex in Northwest Houston. They allegedly saw 30 customers an hour, but after more than a year of investigation, the operation was busted.
Constable Alan Rosen said they confiscated drugs, dozens of firearms, and more from an apartment complex in Northwest Houston. A year-long undercover investigation in Northwest Houston ended with what Harris County Precinct 1 Constable Alan Rosen described as a drive-thru style drug operation being shut down at an apartment complex near On One Drive and Tidwell Road. Authorities said the setup functioned like a high-volume street market, cars pulling up, making quick buys, and rolling out, sometimes at a pace Rosen described as many as 30 cars an hour, which is part of why investigators framed it as organized, repeat business, rather than isolated dealing.
The Bexar County Sheriff's Office showing off their seizure in just the last hour. Up to 30 kilos or 66 pounds of meth were found in a home on Fitch Street, according to deputies. That's between I-35 and Pleasanton Road. The sheriff says some of the drugs were initially uncovered during a traffic stop. Information then led investigators to the home, where they say the drugs were found in a diaper box. Tonight, a man and a woman are being booked into the jail, but more charges could be coming.
Bexar County deputies said a daytime traffic stop on San Antonio's south side turned into a major narcotics case. Investigators stopped a vehicle in the 300 block of Stonewall Street near Pleasanton Road and reported finding 2 kilograms of meth inside, which they said gave them probable cause to push the investigation further. Deputies then obtained a search warrant for a home in the 700 block of Fitch Street and said they recovered about 25 to 30 kilos of meth, 1 kilo of Coca-Cola, and roughly $20,000 in cash. When you stack these cases side by side, the real story isn't only the weight totals or the dollar estimates, it's the methods. Hotels and rentals used for short-term deals, rural and border routes feeding inland markets, cash hidden in everyday freight, and operations that range from local street distribution to networks big enough to trigger federal conspiracy charges.
Announcing one of the largest drug seizures ever in the state after 2.2 tons of fentanyl ingredients were seized. Charges were filed against Minsu Fang, a Chinese national who's accused of being a supplier of the chemicals. Agents say these chemicals are shipped from China to the U.S., where Fang's associates would alter shipping labels and send the chemicals to Mexico, where they would then be made into counterfeit pills. Hamdani says these chemicals end up in pills that lead to fatal overdoses, sometimes in children.
Centers on Minsu Fang, who federal prosecutors say was part of a conspiracy involving more than 2,000 kilograms of fentanyl precursor chemicals shipped from China into the U.S. and then moved onward toward Mexico. The U.S. Department of Justice described it as the largest amount of fentanyl precursors found in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Texas, and one of the largest in the country. According to the indictment summary, Fong and others allegedly shipped the chemicals in about 100 separate shipments between August and October 2023. Prosecutors say the shipments were designed to reduce scrutiny by declaring a de minimis value, under 800, and mixing the boxes with other low-value imports so they could enter without detailed inspection of each package.
All right, thank you, Jamie. Well, 4 people are now behind bars in East Texas after a several months-long drug investigation dubbed Operation Crystal Ball. The Sabine County Sheriff's Office says deputies began the operation in March, targeting narcotics distribution across the county. Over 16 suspects were identified, with some facing federal charges.
Operation Crystal Ball in Sabine County, Texas case. Deputies framed it as a slow-build investigation that started in March 2025, then rolled into an enforcement phase later in the year after investigators said they developed narcotics leads across the area. When the sheriff's office went public in mid-November 2025, officials said the operation had already produced arrests and major seizures tied to meth trafficking. In that initial announcement, authorities reported seizing about 495 grams of meth and about 13 grams of Coca-Cola, and described the investigation as ongoing, with more suspects expected. Over the next few weeks, the Crystal Ball arrests continued to stack up.
Wrapped up in Seguin over the weekend. 21 people were arrested in Operation Low Key, a months-long investigation. Seguin police say the felony drug charges include distributing in Seguin, New Braunfels, and the surrounding area.
A multi-agency narcotics investigation that authorities called Operation Low Key culminated when investigators moved in across the Seguin, New Braunfels, Guadalupe County corridor. Officials described it as a coordinated effort aimed at narcotics trafficking networks operating in the area, not a single traffic stop or one stash house case. According to reporting, the enforcement phase resulted in 21 felony drug arrests and 31 felony charges filed across those cases, with investigators pointing to seizures. Operation Crystal Ball.
Operation Long Reach has been going on since October of 2019. In 2021, his team finally got the evidence to the DEA. The people indicted are from Dallas, Hamilton County, Arlington, Irving, Texas, and more. They are being found responsible for possessing $24 million worth of meth. Caraway says their social media evidence consists of photos dealers posted of meth to pictures of guns.
The Hamilton County Sheriff's Office began the investigation in October of 2019. In October 2019, investigators with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office said they opened a case that would grow into a multi-county trafficking investigation, one that authorities later described as having ties to a Mexican cartel supply line. For nearly 3 years, the case built quietly in the background, the way large trafficking probes usually do, identifying who was moving product, who was storing it, who was distributing it, and how the money and communications flowed between counties. More than 20 people were indicted in what was described as a multi-county drug trafficking ring connected to cartel-level sourcing.
All the cars that were there, the coming and going early hours in the morning and everything else, and they'd be zooming up the street.
News of illegal drugs and an illegal firearm being found on this Northwest Side street was disheartening, but not shocking. Neighbors sounded off against the alleged activity, but didn't want to be identified.
I've seen all the traffic, and I've raised it to a police officer before.
After numerous tips, the Bexar County Sheriff's Office executed a search warrant yesterday at this house on Erskine and Babcock, the alleged drug house right around the corner from Maverick Elementary School. CSO says this man, Jose Luis Martinez, is responsible. He was arrested and charged with felony possession of narcotics and felony possession of a firearm. But the alleged active member of the Texas Syndicate gang is already on probation for family assault. Neighbors somewhat relieved by his most recent arrest.
A short-term probation case on San Antonio's northwest side reportedly turned into a much bigger problem when deputies stopped or contacted a suspected gang member and ended up seizing drugs, a weapon, and $5,421 in cash. Federal prosecutors say a 50-count indictment charged 41 people.
According to the Polk County Sheriff's Office, the group was arrested after a search turned up more than 80 grams of meth and stolen property linked to local burglaries. This is what we know so far. The suspects range in ages from 20s to 70s, right there all on your screen. Each of the 13 are facing felony drug charges, but some also wanted on parole violations and other warrants.
The East Texas drug investigation hit its enforcement phase when deputies served a search warrant at a residence where 12 people were reportedly present at the time of the search. Authorities said 13 people were arrested in total, and that everyone taken into custody faced drug possession charges along with additional charges tied to what investigators said they found during the warrant service. On a Monday in Long Beach, San Antonio investigators said they shut down a Coca-Cola smuggling network rooted in San Antonio, with ties stretching into Floresville and Eagle Pass, after a case that started with informant tips in summer 2005 and built into a major enforcement action. The DE said the takedown led to 29 arrests, the seizure of 210 kilograms of Coca-Cola, and about $4.5 million in cash, with officials warning that retail distributors across the region would now be scrambling because they believe the organization's leadership had been captured. Authorities said the Coca-Cola was allegedly smuggled from Mexico and then distributed beyond Texas-named destinations, and reporting included Tennessee and Ohio, showing how a South Texas pipeline can feed markets far away. Investigators also described a money laundering and cash movement method aimed at hiding proceeds in everyday-looking freight. The cash was allegedly smuggled inside containers of powdered detergent and large buckets of construction material, a hide-it-in-plain-sight tactic they said was part of the group's logistics. One reason the case drew extra attention was who authorities said was involved. Reporting said an elementary school teacher was accused of helping with money laundering, and an 81-year-old woman was arrested in a role investigators described as drug transportation. What looked like a routine traffic
We are learning more tonight about a raid last week that resulted in charges for 8 members of an East Texas gang. Arrest affidavits allege these men are all members of the 59 Bounty Hunters Bloods gang, and court documents obtained by KLTV7 reveal several of these men are linked to a Kilgore from earlier this year.
These arrest affidavits include more details about the raid conducted last week at this home along Stone Road in Kilgore. The home belonging to the man police say is the ringleader, 32-year-old Michael Wilson, a man police say was feared around town. In the early hours of last Tuesday morning, local and federal law officers seized several guns, vehicles, trailers, ledgers, and drugs, along with close to $24,000 in cash. The affidavits also reveal a link to the fatal shooting of Gregory Williams along North Street in Kilgore back in April. The documents claim video surveillance from the day after shows Wilson at this house on Parkwood Drive holding a mop. The video also shows Kevin Ross Tenney Jr. using a rag to wipe down a glass door that Wilson used following the night of the Investigators believe Wilson and Tenney were likely using the rag to, quote, tamper, fabricate, or conceal evidence in connection with the murder. They later found that mop and rag partially burned. The documents also show that Wilson's clothing in the video is consistent with descriptions from witnesses at
Arrest affidavits have provided further insight into the recent apprehension of multiple gang members of the 5'9" bounty hunter bloods in the Kilgore area, linking some of them to an unsolved deletion. A law enforcement raid conducted on Tuesday, September 1, at a residence on Stone Road in Kilgore. According to the affidavits, the home belonged to Michael Wilson, who authorities identify as the leader of the group. The documents allege that all 8 men charged in the case are members of the 5'9" bounty hunter bloods gang. Officers confiscated multiple vehicles, ledgers, illegal drugs, and nearly $24,000 in cash. The affidavits also establish a connection between the suspects and the fatal shooting of Gregory Williams on Kilgore's North Street in April 2020. Williams suffered multiple gunshot wounds, and witnesses reported seeing the suspect flee the scene. Newly obtained arrest records indicate that surveillance footage from the day after the deletion captured Michael Wilson at a residence on Parkwood Drive, west of Kilgore, holding a mop. The footage also reportedly shows Kevin Ross Tinney Jr. using a rag to wipe down a glass doorway that Wilson had used the night of the deletion. Investigators believe Wilson and Tinney were attempting to tamper, fabricate, or conceal evidence related to the crime. Both the mop and rag were later discovered partially burned. Additionally, Wilson's attire in the surveillance video closely matches witness descriptions from the crime scene. A search of the Parkwood Drive residence led officers to seize drugs, along with cash believed to be proceeds from drug sales. Kilgore Police Chief Todd Hunter described the gathered evidence as a treasure trove of intelligence on the gang, including more than 40 seized cell phones.
Targeting members of and affiliates of the Chuco Tango gang. It's all part of a large-scale drug trafficking investigation.
Estela, Thursday morning's operation resulted in the arrest of 21 individuals related to the Chuco Tango gang. That is according to the U.S. Attorney Jaime Esparza. All these individuals suspected of serious drug and firearm offenses. Now, the arrest taking place across the borderland in southern New Mexico and West Texas, targeting El Paso, Socorro, Horizon, Las Cruces, and Anthony, New Mexico. The operations conducted in conjunction by federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies.
Across the borderland, FBI agents arrested 21 members of the Chuco Tango gang in multiple early morning raids. Some of the raids happened in West El Paso. One was on the 600 block of Westway Boulevard.
The other on the 7300 block of Lakehurst Road. The announcement was made during a news conference about 1 hour ago.
I want to show you video of the scene that we got earlier this morning in West El Paso, that is of Lakehurst Road, as FBI agents were searching a home, which we now know was connected to these arrests. Officials say the individuals arrested today were suspected of serious drug and firearm offenses associated with the local gang known as Chucotangos. They are charged with a combination of statutes related to possession with intent to distribute cocaine.
A coordinated operation targeted the prison-born gang known as Chuco Tango in raids across El Paso. The operation resulted in the arrest of 22 individuals, including accused Chuco Tango gang members, associates, and drug dealers. They face charges related to the distribution of various drugs and illegal firearms. The arrests occurred in multiple locations, including El Paso, Horizon City, Socorro, and Las Cruces and Anthony, New Mexico. Due to the high number of arrests, detainees were processed at the El Paso County Coliseum. Charges against the suspects range from drug conspiracy and possession with intent to distribute to unlawful possession of firearms by felons.
In other news, according to the El Paso FBI, in a successfully multi-agency-led operation, Michelle Angelica Pineda, known as La Cheli, was arrested in El Paso on Thursday. Pineda was wanted by the Mexican government for her alleged involvement in multiple in Ciudad Juarez. Law enforcement says Pineda had entered the U.S. illegally and was allegedly operating a drug trafficking ring for a gang out of Mexico.
Michelle Angelica Pineda was arrested yesterday. She's wanted in Mexico for her alleged involvement in fire and is suspected of multiple other Ciudad Juarez. Local law enforcement, including the FBI Safe Street Gang Task Force, learned that Pineda had entered into the United States illegally and was allegedly operating a drug trafficking ring from a gang from Mexico.
Chuco Tango has been linked to Michelle Angelica Pineda, also known as La Shelly, a Juarez-based leader of the Aristas Asesinos Street Gang. Pineda is accused of leading a violent group that mutilated victims in ritualistic deletions dedicated to La Santa Muerte. Intelligence from the El Paso Police Department revealed communication between Pineda and Chuco Tango members, leading to her February arrest at an East El Paso motel. She was subsequently deported to Mexico, where she faces multiple deletion charges. Chuco Tango, named after the local nickname El Chuco for El Paso, is the city's faction of the larger Tango Blast gang, which operates in major Texas cities. Unlike hierarchical prison gangs like Barrio Azteca and the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, Chuco Tango functions with a decentralized leadership structure. The gang does not enforce a blood-in, blood-out rule for membership and operates in loosely organized cells outside of prison. The gang has been involved in violent conflicts with the Barrio Azteca gang, particularly due to its refusal to pay a street tax for drug trafficking operations in El Paso. Tango Blast originated as a prison self-protection group and has grown into a network of loosely affiliated factions across Texas. The original Tango groups, known as the Four Horsemen, include Houston, D-Town, Dallas, Cerritos, Fort Worth, and ATX, Austin. Other factions include Tango Orijon in San Antonio, West Texas, Carpedos, Corpus Christi, and the Valucos from the Rio Grande Valley. Law enforcement agencies continue to monitor the expansion of Chuco Tango and other Tango Blast factions, focusing on their role in drug trafficking and violent crime in Texas and beyond.
If you take a look over at where it happened, it's a very different scene than when we first found everything that went down. Now, after an operation happened in those early hours, we have a better idea of who exactly was taken into custody. The new task force from the FBI and Homeland Security says that they had court-authorized approval to address what they called public safety concerns after this lot right here was used as what they say was a frequent gathering place for people the task force believe are associated with Tren de Aragua and other criminal elements, including where federal law enforcement says an individual had sold to officers on multiple occasions. After a search warrant, the HSTF South Texas says it took 143 people into custody.
A late-night enforcement operation on San Antonio's north side turned into a massive immigration-linked raid. Authorities served warrants at a property near Bass Road and San Pedro Avenue that investigators said was tied to an unauthorized nightclub and suspected criminal activity. Officials said 163 people were detained and 143 were taken into ICE custody. After additional processing and review, the FBI and Homeland Security investigations said 51 of the 143 had confirmed ties to Tren de Aragua. Records later reported by local media said investigators also seized 3 handguns, small amounts of Coca-Cola, Mary, and about $27,014 in cash during the operation.
The operation marks a significant development in an ongoing crackdown on the Venezuelan transnational organization Tren de Aragua that has been operating in San Antonio for months, according to the San Antonio Police Department. More than 150 SAPD, Texas's Department of Public Safety, Homeland Security investigations, state and federal agents helped in the sweeping of hundreds of vacant apartments allegedly being used by Tren de Aragua. The movement of law enforcement as they found those who were using empty apartments allegedly to commit their crimes. Crimes which we are told include prostitution, distribution of cocaine, and human trafficking. In all, 19 people were charged, according to the chief of police.
San Antonio police and partner agencies launched a pre-dawn sweep at the Palacia Apartments on the north side in an operation they called Operation Aurora. Authorities said 20 people were detained and 19 were charged. and teams also checked hundreds of vacant units while investigating allegations tied to suspected Tren-de-Aragua activity. Police framed it as a footprint case, not one apartment, saying the investigation involved complaints and intelligence about ongoing criminal activity at the complex, with some suspects also facing immigration holds depending on status. In San Antonio, federal agents and local authorities announced a major crackdown on the Texas syndicate on December 8, 2011, saying suspects were being rounded up and taken to federal court to face racketeering, RICO, deletion, attempted deletion, and drug trafficking charges. Investigators said 17 San Antonio members of TIAS were indicted in a federal RICO conspiracy, and that 6 of them were arrested that morning, while the rest were already in custody on other charges. Prosecutors allege the group operated as an organized criminal enterprise beginning around January 2008, and they tied the case to a list of violent racketeering acts along with conspiracy plots and ongoing drug distribution. The public allegations included the demise of George Escobedo and George Davenport, attempted deletions in March 2011, the demise of Troy Lamberth, and the demise of Priscilla and Vidori, plus additional deletion conspiracy claims tied to rival targets and internal disputes. Authorities also claimed some of the violence was committed to gain entry into TIAS or build rank inside the gang, pointing specifically at allegations that Andrew "Dirty" Vidori was involved in multiple deletions as part of trying to elevate his status. Investigators said other defendants were tied to the July 2, 2011 demise of Priscilla and Vidori and described that incident as connected to TIAS status and internal pressure. Federal authorities said the sweep targeted alleged leaders, members, and associates of the Latin Kings as part of a racketeering and drug distribution investigation that prosecutors said had been operating in Central Texas since 2005. Prosecutors framed it as an enterprise case, not just individual drug arrests. The federal RICO conspiracy allegations included violent crime and weapons-related acts alongside drug distribution.
5 alleged members of the money-chasing Forever Crip gang have been arrested in connection with an ongoing THC and Mary J trafficking operation in Abilene, Texas. On Monday, Crip members were taken into custody as part of the investigation. They faced charges of possession of Mary J, manufactured delivery of a controlled substance, and engaging in organized criminal activity. According to court documents, all 5 suspects were present at the April search warrant execution, which led to the discovery of 13 pounds of Mary J, 90 grams of THC oil, 2 AK-47 firearms, and nearly $7,000 in cash inside a residence in North Abilene. Authorities also confiscated cell phones from the suspects, revealing conversations about organizing and completing drug sales. Investigators found thousands of images of large amounts of Mary J, THC oil, and cash stored on the suspect devices. Additionally, messages on Thompson's phone referenced plans to assemble a team to rob another local drug dealer. Several of the suspects were arrested on additional charges during the course of the investigation, including offenses related to large cash transactions and evading arrest. 3 of the 5 gang members were sentenced to probation, while the other 2 received jail time for their involvement in the operation.
On a Monday in Longview, investigators say a drug case that had been building behind the scenes went loud when the Gregg County Organized Drug Enforcement Unit and the Longview SWAT team served a search warrant at a home in the 200 block of Osborne Street. Inside, officers reported finding a mix of suspected narcotics along with cash, the kind of seizure investigators often point to when they believe drugs are being held for distribution rather than personal use. By the end of the operation, 6 people were arrested and booked into the Gregg County Jail. Some cases are still at the arrest and charging stage, while others grew into sweeping indictments that span counties and states, but the takeaway is consistent. Texas sits at the center of multiple pipelines, and when one lane gets shut down, investigators say another tries to open somewhere else. That's why these busts keep coming in waves, not because the problem is small, but because the network is always adapting.